The eCom Seller Summit was created to prove that with the right tools and training, anyone and everyone can make money in e-commerce. So many people want to try their hand at e-commerce, selling on eBay, Amazon, Shopify, and more, but they're afraid they won't be successful. This summit will show you that there's many ways to do e-commerce, and there are many platforms you can explore because e-commerce really has no limits. It really can pay your bills, and e-commerce never sleeps. There's nothing like waking up to profits from getting sales all night long. My name is Nicole Whitlock, and this is the eCom Seller Summit.
So my topic for today is top 3 mistakes to avoid when you're sourcing from India. So before we start, I want to just give a bit of a background on myself. I've been working in the sourcing industry for almost 20 years. I started my career in India and then I moved to the Philippines. I was based in China for almost 9 years and I'm currently in Singapore. When I was in China, I was mostly producing manufacturing research reports. And my team and I, we visited hundreds of factories in China and other countries in Asia to try to understand how products are manufactured in those factories and how they are exported and what are some of the things that really impacts the pricing and quality of products. For most of my career, I worked with a leading sourcing platform called Global Sources, and I've worked with both buyers and suppliers. So I have a good understanding of the challenges that both sides of the trading industry face. And more recently, I've been focused on sourcing from India. So I founded a sourcing trip for e-commerce and Amazon sellers to India called India Sourcing Trip. And I also organize a virtual show every month where I interview manufacturers from India. It's called Virtual India Sourcing Show. All right, so let's get started with the mistakes that people need to avoid when sourcing from India. So the number one mistake that I see people making is not doing proper due diligence on the suppliers that they are working with. Now, many times people go to Google or Alibaba Global Sources, search for a supplier, and then immediately start talking with them, negotiating without really looking into their background and checking if they are really, first of all, a legitimate company, if they are a manufacturer, and most importantly, what kind of export experience they have. Because India is a huge country. There's a huge population and there's a lot of demand for products domestically. So a lot of factories in India do manufacture for the domestic market, and those kinds of factories don't have a lot of experience exporting. Some of them might not even have export licenses. Many of them might not be aware of the standards and requirements for overseas markets. So you do want to avoid sourcing from those kinds of factories. And so that's why it's very important to check if the factory that you're trying to source from has export experience. And you also want to make sure that it's a legitimate company because, unfortunately, there are some bad actors out there, and you'll find people or companies or, people posing as companies and sourcing agents on various websites, and they might try to mislead you or worse still scam you. So you do need to be aware of that and make sure that you're doing the right due diligence to check if the company that you're dealing with is a real company. So there are a couple of different ways to check if a company is an actual company. So first of all, there are a lot of government websites in India that you can go on and cross-check the company's information. So for example, you could check the company's GST number. So, just go to Google and search India GST number. And if a company has a GST number, then they are, of course, a registered company. So at least you know that, yes, they are a real company and they're not somebody just sitting in their basement trying to, scam people. And then you can also try to look for the company's registration number. Now, this is known as the Udyog Aadhaar, which is like, it's like a company registration number for small industries. So the business type of the company will also be mentioned on this number. And you can also ask these companies to send you their documents, to send you copies of their business certificates, licenses, etc. And then you can also just do a Google search of their company name and see what kind of information they are posting on different websites, like on their own website, on supplier directories, on exhibitor portals, for example. And is all of the information consistent? Do they have the same contact details, same phone numbers, email addresses on all of the different platforms? And also, you want to make sure that the company does have an export import number. This is really important because if a company does not have this number, then they won't be able to export out of India at all. You can, of course, also do a factory audit to make sure that they are a manufacturer if they claim to be one. And there are a lot of third-party QC and inspection companies that will go to the factory, do an audit for a couple of $100s. Also, you want to just make sure that they specialize in the product that you are actually sourcing, because what happens in India is that suppliers may produce one product in-house, but they may source, different products from other companies. So you want to make sure that the product that you are sourcing, especially if you have to develop a new product, you do want to check that the company has specialization and expertise in manufacturing that specific product. And usually the expertise or the specialization in India is by material. So for example, if a supplier produces, let's say, wooden products, if that's their specialty, then they'll be making all sorts of wooden products. Maybe some suppliers focus on metal products and that's their specialty. Others could be doing, soft goods like home furnishings, for example, and that'll be their specialty. Of course, there are companies that are bigger and they have separate units for manufacturing different, products made from different materials, and that's fine as well. But you do want to make sure that they are, a real manufacturer of that product. You also want to check if the supplier has actually exhibited at one of the export-focused fairs in Delhi. Now, EPCH is Export Promotion Council for Handicrafts, and they organize a fair in Delhi known as Delhi Fair, which is one of the most important export-focused fairs of India. It's also known as the Canton Fair of India. And only exporters are allowed to exhibit at this show. So if you find that a company has exhibited at one of these shows in the past, then you can be sure that they are really an exhibitor or they are really an exporter. Also, you can check if they have exhibited at international sourcing fairs. Many suppliers in India, they exhibit at fairs in Germany, France, etc. So if they have exhibited at a fair like this, then they are definitely export focused. And you can, of course, also ask for customer references and try to talk to some of their buyers to check if they are giving you accurate information. Also, you can ask them if they have an export house star rating. This is a rating that is given by the government of India based on the amount of exports that a company does. And the star rating ranges from 1 star to 5 stars. So if they do have this rating, then again, it definitely means that they are an exporter. Okay, so those are some of the things that you can do to check that the company is really legitimate. And of course, you don't need to check all of the boxes, but the more boxes that you can check, the more confident you can be that, yes, you are dealing with a real company that has a factory and is export experienced. Now, another mistake I see people making when sourcing from India is not keeping a few extra weeks in the lead time when they place orders. Now, when you're sourcing from India, delays do happen. You should be prepared for that. And sometimes I find that suppliers, they do overpromise and underdeliver, maybe because, some suppliers are small and mid-sized companies that are not very organized. Also, there are so many different moving parts and a fragmented supply chain that suppliers need to deal with. So a lot of things are really not under their control. And they themselves are dealing with a lot of challenges, whether it's in terms of infrastructure, for example, the supply of power and water may be erratic in their factory. And similarly, they may be facing labor issues or raw material issues. So there are a lot of moving parts and different aspects that suppliers have to deal with. And this is one of the reasons why sometimes delays do happen in India. So I think it's just better to be prepared for that. Also, suppliers tend to prioritize bigger and more long-term clients that they have better relationships with. So if you are a smaller company or if you are a first-time buyer, you may find that sometimes, especially during peak period, or if they have a larger order from another buyer, they may not prioritize your orders. So here are some suggestions on how to manage lead times when you're sourcing from India. So first of all, make sure that you're planning way in advance, and try to include at least a 2-week buffer time in the production lead time or the deadline that you give to suppliers. 1 to 2 weeks is kind of safe. You can also try to increase the order frequency so that you're not placing very large orders at a time. You could consider placing multiple smaller orders throughout the year so that they can be shipped out of the factory faster. Especially if you're producing, handmade products, those do tend to take longer. And of course, the larger the order, the more time it will take to produce those kinds of products. So if you are sourcing handmade products, you might want to source or ship them out in smaller quantities. Also, as much as possible, try to give your supplier order forecasts so that they themselves can prepare in terms of raw material. They can stock up on raw materials, and they can also prepare their production accordingly. Another thing that I found works in India is that if you provide an incentive for meeting or even beating deadlines, so if you maybe want to provide like a small increase in the actual price that you're paying for the product, maybe a couple of cents more if they actually beat the deadline that you have given them, and that sometimes might work as well. Another thing that you could do is just stay in touch with your supplier throughout the production process and ask them for regular updates. You can do Zoom calls with them on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, and just check in with them to make sure that everything is moving according to plan and there are no hiccups, or they are not facing any challenges, any raw material shortages, any labor issues. And that will also give you an opportunity to check on the quality of products. So you can, for example, ask them to go to the assembly line and maybe pick up some of the products that are currently under production and take a look at those on video. Or maybe you can ask them to send you photos and videos on a regular basis of products that are being manufactured. You can, of course, also work with a sourcing agent in order to manage lead times better. So it does help to have somebody on the ground representing you that can actually visit the factory on your behalf to make sure that everything is happening according to plan. And you also want to make sure that the sourcing agent is based in the city where your factory is located. Otherwise, it will be difficult for them to visit the factory. If the factory is in the same city, then it's not uncommon for sourcing agents to visit the factory, every couple of weeks to make sure that things are moving on smoothly. Now, another thing to keep in mind in terms of lead times is how far your factory is from the port and how long it might take for your goods to reach a port. Now, this is a map of India, as you can see, and highlighted over here are most of the key ports in India. However, the most commonly used port is Mumbai, JNPT, Mumbai on the west coast. This is the most commonly used port, and this is also the most well developed of all of the different ports that there are in India. So just be a bit mindful of where your factory is located in India and how long it might take for your product to reach the port. So, let's say, for example, if you're sourcing a product from East India over here, and you need to send your goods to, let's say, the East Coast of the US, your product will need to be trucked to Mumbai. And then from Mumbai, it can go to the East Coast. Whereas if you ship it via Kolkata, it might take longer and it would go to the East Coast, to the West Coast. So it might make sense for you to truck your product to Mumbai and then ship it from Mumbai to the East Coast, even though it is quite far away from the port. So these are the things that you need to discuss with your freight forwarder and just try to find out what is the fastest, quickest, and most cost-effective way to ship your product because there are different options available. Now, of course, if your factory is based in South India, then you would definitely go from one of these ports, either Cochin Port or Tuticorin. There are different ports in the south as well. Now, keep in mind that Delhi is here up north. Delhi is a dry port. So sometimes what happens is that suppliers would quote you a price of FOB Delhi. So what that means is that you still need to get your product from Delhi to Mumbai, to the Mumbai port, if it's going out by sea. So just keep that in mind. And also, if you're shipping to the US, then shipping to the East Coast from Mumbai is much faster than shipping to the West Coast. And sometimes the difference can be significant. So to the East Coast, it typically takes about, I think, 22 to 24 days. That's the sailing time from Mumbai to the East Coast. And then from Mumbai to the West Coast, it could take up to 35 to 40 days. I mean, especially if you're an Amazon seller and if you are shipping directly to an Amazon warehouse, then which warehouse is assigned to you is not in your control. I mean, Amazon will assign the warehouse to you. But what you could do in such situations is when you are creating the shipping plan in Amazon, in the back end of Amazon, then select an address that is closer to the East Coast. Maybe it could be a warehouse on the East Coast or another address. It doesn't really matter what address you type in the back end of Amazon when you are creating your shipping plan. The ship from address is it's just used as reference for Amazon to assign you a warehouse. So even if your product is not actually shipping from there, it doesn't really matter. But if you do type in an address on the East Coast in that field in the shipping plan, then you are more likely to be assigned a warehouse on the East Coast, and then you can ship your product from India to the East Coast instead of having to send it to the West Coast or some other warehouses. Okay, the third mistake that I see people making is not building a good relationship when they're sourcing from India. Now, if you're sourcing from China, you're already aware that relationships are really important when you're sourcing from China, but they are even more important when you're importing from India. And in some cases, I've seen that relationships trump business. I've seen suppliers that actually reject orders from big companies because they don't have a good relationship, or they think that they won't be able to work well with the company. And also a lot of these export focused in businesses in India are actually family run. So the relationship becomes even more important. And it's also very easy to establish a relationship because, you're dealing with maybe the dad and the son and other family members. So what I would suggest is don't have a single-minded focus only on price. Of course, price is important and you do want to have the most competitive price for your product, but also keep in mind that you want to build a long-term relationship, because once you do have a long-term relationship with the supplier, you will tend to get better terms, priority treatment, and they will prioritize your orders over other buyers' orders. And you might also get better payment terms. So look at the big picture and don't focus on cents and dollars when you're negotiating with suppliers. Also, if you put too much cost pressure on your supplier, it can, of course, affect the quality and on-time delivery. So overall, you got to, focus on building a strong relationship. And with the relationship, you will be able to get better prices, better terms, better lead times, and that overall will result in savings for you over a long period of time. So here are some tips on how to build a good relationship with your supplier. So first of all, just be a good buyer. Timely payments, give them detailed and clear instructions, know your product really well, and be willing to help them as well to improve their processes. Indian suppliers do like it when buyers, bring in their expertise, their knowledge, and help suppliers improve their processes. Also, treat them as a partner. I find that is just so important when you're working with Indian suppliers. Tell them about your vision, your big picture, your big picture plans and your overall forecasts for your business and where you see your business going in the next few years, and how you want to work with them as a partner to help them grow as well. And I feel that if you strive to have a win-win partnership with the supplier, then they're more willing to work with you together, and they're more willing to negotiate on prices and other aspects. Also, don't display obvious distrust of your supplier when you are sourcing from them. You have to have some level of trust in your supplier. Also, when you are negotiating with them, do it in a respectful way. Don't be disrespectful and say that, hey, I need a better price and you're not giving me a good price. And work with them together as a partner and say that, hey, this price is not working out for me, and let's figure out a way to get the price down. Let's look at the product and see if we can make any changes to the product, or if we can use different materials or different processes, or reduce complexity in the product in order to reduce the price, and work together with them to reduce your price or negotiate other aspects. So don't be the know-it-all foreigner. I think a lot of Indians don't like that kind of attitude. If you come in there and say that, hey, I know everything, and you don't know what you're talking about, and it's my way or the highway. Don't kind of work like that with suppliers. You want to make sure that you are learning from them as well. I mean, they are on the ground producing these products for different types of buyers, and they know the production process better than anybody else. So work with them, leverage on their knowledge and expertise to make your product better, and work together as a partner. But of course, you want to, of course, make sure that you are not compromising your own profit, because after all, this is a business, and you want to be profitable. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that your supplier is profitable. I think that's so important when you are doing business together, and both buyer and supplier can grow together as partners. Also, I have a Facebook group to help people source from India. So in case you're interested, you can join this group as well, facebook.com/groups/India sourcing. And I hope to see you in that group. Thank you so much for your time today. Goodbye.